You stare at the ceiling. It's 2 a.m. again. You feel completely alone. That quiet space between you isn't just empty, it's heavy. You keep checking your phone. You wonder if they miss you. You ask yourself if you're just too needy. You ask yourself if you broke something. You wonder if love is supposed to feel like this. The relationship didn't fade because your care ran out. It faded because your shared safety quietly collapsed. You are not failing at love. This is not a sign you chose wrong. Every couple that has ever loved deeply has stood exactly where you are right now. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what your partner's mind is doing from day 1 through day 30, why silence hurts you both differently, and how to finally step out of the panic. Let's get into it. Most couples believe that when an avoidant withdraws during no contact, they are simply moving on without you. But the real truth is, your partner's nervous system is reading safety before their mind can ever catch up. And when emotional security disappears, the love does not vanish. It just goes underground. What looks like cold detachment is actually someone who has been emotionally flooded for so long that silence becomes their only shelter. They are not punishing you. They are protecting a system that feels completely maxed out. Human attachment never builds on logic. It wires through regulation. When two people drift, it rarely means someone stopped loving. It means both started bracing. The anxious brain reaches for closeness to calm the panic. The avoidant brain reaches for space to calm the overwhelm. Neither pattern works, they just feed the cycles. And here's what nobody explains. The moment you stop chasing the distance and start understanding the physiology behind it, everything shifts. You stop making it personal. You start seeing the withdrawal for what it really is, a nervous system asking for room to reset, not a heart asking permission to leave. The initial flood is where it all begins. Most couples assume the first few days bring instant relief to an avoidant partner. But beneath the surface, a different pattern emerges. When the constant push finally stops, their nervous system actually spikes. They spent months operating in survival mode. They braced for every conversation. They prepared for every perceived demand. And now, the pressure just lifts. Not louder apologies, not frantic texting, not playing it cool, but a sudden, heavy quiet that forces everything they buried straight to the surface. You will notice they pull away because they are overwhelmed, not because they are gone. When you imagine them hearing that you are giving them room, instead of demanding immediate answers right now, something in him is quietly registering, I don't have to defend myself this time. That's when the walls between you start to soften, before either of you ever speaks again. Here's the part no one talks about next. The phantom echo starts quietly. Most people in relationships think their avoidant partner is just enjoying freedom during this window, but the psychological truth cuts much deeper. The human brain runs on pattern recognition. When familiar friction disappears, the mind does not simply forget. It replays you. The avoidant wiring starts reviewing the small moments they dismissed while you were actively fighting. They remember how safe it felt when you weren't asking for proof. They notice the absence of your warmth. This isn't a sudden change of heart. It's a nervous system finally catching up to what it lost. Not calculated games, not sudden realization. Just quiet reflection on what they pushed away. When they notice you living your life with grounded presence, instead of analyzing your entire emotional state, what's moving through her is, She doesn't need me to fix this. That's when they stop feeling like a burden and start feeling like a person worth returning to. Honestly, the autonomy test is where the real shift begins. Most couples assume an avoidant will naturally lean back once the initial tension fades. Yet what actually happens is a quiet tug of war. Their attachment history is asking one terrifying question. Can they want you and still protect their independence? The truth is simple. Distance never heals fear. Safety does. When they realize you are not tracking their every move, their nervous system finally exhales. They test the waters by leaving the door slightly open. They casually drop your name in conversation. It's not manipulation. It's a biological check for danger before stepping back into the light. And here's what changes everything. When you match that subtle signal with grounded presence, instead of rushing to close the gap, you prove that connection never equals suffocation. This isn't a communication hack. It's just what two emotionally available people naturally do when they finally stop bracing. When they reach out and you reply, "I'm glad you shared that," instead of, "Took you long enough," he feels the unspoken safety of choosing you without losing himself. That's when the anxious avoidance cycle finally stops driving you both apart. The grief window is the one most couples never figure out. Most people in relationships expect a cinematic reunion once an avoidant finally breaks the silence. But attachment science reveals something entirely different. The protective armor they built starts to crack under emotional weight. You have to understand avoidance completely. It isn't the absence of care. It's the exhaustion of caring without feeling safe enough to show it. When silence stretches into weeks, the avoidant nervous system cannot sustain the numbness. The longing surfaces. They feel your absence like a physical weight. Not dramatic confessions, not sudden promises, just quiet evenings where they realize they lost an anchor. When they finally sit alone and admit, "I didn't know how to stay when I was drowning," instead of, "Let's just pretend nothing changed," what's moving through her is, "I can finally be honest without falling apart." That's the shift that turns a relationship that feels like a negotiation into one that feels like a true refuge. The return threshold is where it gets really interesting. Most couples believe an avoidant just moves on smoothly if you maintain distance. But the actual return looks nothing like that. It's a slow, deliberate walk toward safety. They aren't returning to rewrite the past. They're stepping toward the version of you that stopped forcing a feeling. Their nervous system has mapped a new reality. You didn't punish them for leaving. You didn't collapse in their absence. You became steady. This isn't a trick for avoiding conflict. It's what it looks like when someone has learned to love without losing themselves in the process. When they finally say, "I'm scared I'll hurt you again," instead of, "We should just get back to normal," something in your chest quietly registers, "We can actually build this differently now." That's the moment you stop reacting to old patterns and start responding to real connection. That's when intimacy finally feels like coming home instead of walking on glass. These aren't strategies for winning a game of push and pull. They're an invitation to stop chasing the silence and start becoming the grounded presence you always needed in your own life. When you internalize this rhythm, you stop reacting to their distance and start responding to your own worth. Your entire relational dynamic will shift before you ever say a word. Real intimacy doesn't start when you finally find the right person. It starts when you decide to become one.